My name is Ada Ugo Abara. I was born in Nigeria and raised in the northeast of Italy. Growing up in Italy, I felt like we were few family of African origins because I couldn't see anything related to Italians with an African background in TV and mainstream communication. And so when I had the possibility to study my bachelor's degree in political sciences, international relations and human rights, and then deepen a little bit more in development, cooperation, and innovation in the global economy as my master's degree, I had the chance to meet other university students from different African countries and other students that were either born or raised in Italy. And we felt like we were supposed to create our own field of communication to start talking about Italians with different origins and with a foreign background. So we started with a youth organization called Arising Africans, and then we proceeded to work with other second generation organizations across the country to try to create a counter narrative on Italy and on Italians with different backgrounds. Now, as a professional, I'm working in the field of development and cooperation, especially with diaspora organizations. And we are trying to leverage the potential of diaspora in the development and cooperation field, and especially in, let's say, setting the priorities of institutional intervention and trying to reduce the gap between the priorities that are set in Europe and the needs that are being raised from the local populations. The war in Ukraine has been teaching us recently. Italy, for instance, has been, let's say, doing certain economic explorations and partnership explorations with some African countries to find other ways to receive energy from African countries. But as they're doing that and we are trying to find other solutions, then we start looking at the economic links that are also active between European countries and African countries. And some of the agreements that are binding and have been, let's say, great constraints in local economies are agreements that were signed immediately after the independence of the countries, where the ones signing the agreements were people that were trained in European universities or people that were left by the European institutions leaving the countries. And they signed the agreements that oblige the country to keep that certain structure for at least 100 years. And when we start thinking about, okay, how can we leave the colonial history behind and how can we build something, we have to do it keeping in mind that we are working with agreements that are from that colonial past. And for instance, I think about my own country of origin, Nigeria. Nigeria is the first exporter of petrol, oil and gas in the continent. And the agreements that were signed with Italian or other European extraction companies and multinationals, if we just check who they benefit, they are not benefiting the local population. And local population don't even have access to the income that is generated from that activity. So being the first exporter of oil and gas becomes like the nightmare of Nigerians, because we have companies that are extracting it from our shores, and then from our shores they are just diverting it to other countries. They are not processed in our country, and then we have to buy petrol. So we are the first exporter, and we have some periods where there's no petrol for cars in Nigeria, and people have to queue for hours before they can try to buy 5-liter tank of petrol. And at the same time, we are now the first economy in the continent, but we don't have electricity for 24 hours a day. We have the time where we are supposed to have like 2 hours now, 2 hours in the evening. And that's not even respected. It's not respected because of our government, but it's also not respected because of the links that are draining the energy from our continent. I think that analyzing the colonial past of a country or of the continent is not only about history. It's about analyzing how the European and Western gaze is still powerful in the country, not only as an external let's say, constraint that is binding us, but also as our own way of seeing ourselves in the global environment. So when we are studying in Nigeria and across the continent, we study what happened in Europe, and we don't study what happened in other African countries, because we are studying from books that were created in the colonial ex-colonial countries. So studying in Nigeria from books that were created in London, written by Londoners, uh, analyzing Nigeria won't give you a precise idea of your heritage, your background, because it's something that's still external. But that's what is still, let's say, shaping the educational system of the country. And I think that we have to consider in a broad way how the colonial links are still, how can we say this, how they are still effective today, and how they're still shaping policies, who our policies are benefiting, and why our policies are benefiting that target. The European Union and the European structure is not cannot be the same everywhere. There are other unions, other regions, other policies, other approaches that have been experimented elsewhere and that are valid for their system. It's good to acknowledge them, to interrogate our European perspective and our European way of studying, analyzing the world, and being aware of how we can enrich also our own place, our own territory, and our own vision if we are able to accept what is coming from other places as valid.